Will this humidity ever go away? Well, it is going to go away. Just have to wait another day for that to happen. And with southwest flow, we'll turn more northwest and we'll get into some drier air in the northeast and northern mid Atlantic states from Friday into Sunday. In the meantime, we do have some showers and thunderstorms running around tonight up and down the eastern seaboard and across the Gulf states, while the west is enjoying good old summertime. And we're here a few minutes early tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system, and you too can enjoy the fastest growing, be part of the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. And if you use the coupon code SUMMER 2024, well, you'll save some money, and it's always good to do that. And you will get 10% off on your purchase. Will they, Mr. Rayo?
What happened?
Well, we were at 7:30. I figured I'd start the show since I figured you'd be a minute or two late. So I started it. I just finished the open. So as Ed Norton would say, you're on the air.
We are on the air, and
We're on
oh,
the
look
air.
at that. We just went from left to right.
Yes. Not politically, but that's a
All
different
right.
story.
Well, Joe, it's interesting that at this hour, and in case you're watching a recorded version, at about 7:30 this evening, we had a very heavy thunderstorm over portions of Ulster County. In fact, there's a flood advisory that went up because the rain came down so hard up there. But it looks like the majority of the shower and storm activity is going to stay pretty well north and west of Interstate 84. Much of the Hudson Valley is free and clear. There are a few showers south down toward New York City, but they're not as consequential, if you may use that term, as what parts of Ulster just went through. And I was saying to Renata, because she was asking, well, how much rain do you think we'll get tonight? I said, if we're lucky, we don't get anything tonight. And I think if we're lucky, we won't get anything tomorrow either. It looks like tomorrow, whatever shower or storm activity occurs will probably be south of 287, again, down toward New York City and maybe parts of Long Island, but much of the Hudson Valley again going unscathed. And that being the case, it may stay dry in much of the Hudson Valley now, right on through not only the end of the week and into the weekend, but all the way out until maybe next Wednesday when we have a shot at some scattered shower and thunderstorm activity and some very nice weather with lower humidity and more comfortable conditions also approaching, setting the stage for what looks to be a great Friday, a pick of the weekday, if you will, and a dry and increasingly warm and slowly increasingly more humid weekend coming up Saturday and into Sunday.
While you were speaking, I had the Upton radar up, and now I've got the Fort Dix radar. There's actually a fairly strong cell moving across northwest Jersey at the moment, getting ready to cross the border and go into Orange County. And there's also a flood warning that's up. It looks like that's up in northwestern Sullivan County, perhaps. It's sort of.
Yeah, in fact, you could see that little box in is that Sullivan County or is that Ulster?
I think it kind of looks more. If it's Ulster, it's westernmost Ulster. It looks like it's
It
in
looks like
Sullivan
Sullivan
County.
County.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's I was mistaken. It's not Ulster County. It's Sullivan County, and that little area there, you could see that little blob of red that's moving away to the upper right. That was the cell that probably brought a considerable amount of rain, maybe an inch or two in maybe only an hour's time. And so that area is under some sort of a flood advisory. I don't have
Yeah,
the
the flood the one there is actually it's in Sullivan County. It's in central Sullivan County. It's a flash flood warning. Uh, they're just talking about flash flooding of small creeks and streams. Blah blah blah. Thunderstorms producing heavy rain across the warned area. Well, now they're done with, and this flash flood warning expires at 8 o'clock. I agree with you pretty much. all the way through with right through the weekend, and certainly for the way these thunderstorms are setting up tonight, they're in bands with a lot of bands and clusters, and there's a lot of distance between one band versus the other. You see the stuff that's in the Hudson Valley and north of 84, it looks like, for the most part. And, there's a couple of streaks here that run from Southwest Jersey across Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, but they don't look, doesn't look especially heavy there. But there's a more vibrant line of storms from northeastern New York, south and west and north of Binghamton, and then it cuts into Pennsylvania near Williamsport, and then heads further south down to about Route 80. Yeah, I mean, unless that line were to hold together, the southern part of that, unless the southern part of that line holds together, I think you're right. It could very well wind up going through the whole night and not get much of anything. And probably for most folks, I think that's going to be the case.
Yes, and also interesting, and we mentioned this the other day. I think on Monday we were looking at the fact that SPC had much of the Northeast out in general thunderstorm coverage. And yeah, I think it was you who mentioned that, well, maybe as time wears on, as we get closer into the actual date of interest, that they may upgrade that to marginal. And indeed, today they not only upgraded it to marginal, there's a slice of slight chance of severe across central sections of New York, back southwest into northwestern Pennsylvania. And again, this area just a couple of days ago was being outlined merely as, general thunderstorm coverage. But again, as you get closer to the actual date in question, and you get a chance to get a better handle on things, sometimes you can upgrade, and that's exactly what the Weather Service did. They upgraded two notches. Actually, they went from level 0, which is just general thundershower coverage, to a level 2, in the case of that slice of yellow that you see on the map right now on the screen, for a slight risk of thunderstorm activity.
And the marginal risk down through Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, uh, central, mostly eastern Maryland, into much of Virginia, and bottoming out in North Carolina. And then also they had a kind of a finger that goes across northern Ohio, central Indiana to central Illinois, to about the Missouri state line. Also, they've got a marginal to slight risk in the southern half of Arizona for later today and tonight, and a marginal risk from eastern Oregon on up through Montana. I mean, so I've got the map up. Might as well take you through. This morning they added a marginal risk for southern New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, southward into northeast Virginia. I tend to think earlier today I thought maybe they nudged that up a little further north and a little bit further south, but now I'm just thinking that along the lines of what you said earlier, which is that we may very well see most of the activity south of a line from, say, Philadelphia to New York City. It'll be mostly south of there rather than to the north. And also, we've got this marginal risk area in uh, southern Arizona again tomorrow, and also up in central and northeastern Montana. And as far as day 3 is concerned, no thunderstorms. This is Friday from Maine to Virginia, west all the way to Nebraska, all the way up back to the Great Lakes. General thunderstorms from Texas and the uh, to southern Missouri, eastward to North Carolina and southernmost Virginia southward, with this front going by, the Bermuda High kind of getting pressed down a little bit. Still going to have that moisture flow into the Gulf states in the southeast, but it gets cut off about halfway up so that the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states and west of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes don't have any worries at all as far as thunderstorms are concerned. And I think you're right. We're going to probably carry that through the weekend. Welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board, to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, and those of you who are in the background, welcome as well. Subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss us. We're on Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. And Fridays and Saturdays, if there's a storm around, we'll add a show and we'll let you know. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And if you like the show, what should they do, Joe, if they like the show?
If they do, they should hit the like button. And
Hmm.
it's been a while since we've got to 100 likes. I don't suspect, unless we have a sudden threat from a tropical cyclone in the viewing region, that we're going to be seeing 100 likes. But still, we like and we enjoy the fact that we have a nice, tight group of people which come back each night and tune us in. And I'll tell you, Joe, the other night when we were not on Monday night,
Oh,
uh,
I got, message after message. You
yeah,
know,
people saying, where are they?
TS was very upset.
Yes, yes.
TS especially was very upset. We won't say her name.
All right.
Um, Taylor Swift. Anyway, we've got we have flash flood watches up in a narrow band in cutting South Carolina virtually in half, and then running up into North Carolina, away from the coast. Looks like it's mostly north and west of the I-90 of I-95 in North Carolina. We have flash flood watches along the Texas coastal bend from halfway up to uh, just into southwestern Louisiana. A few parishes there in the flash flood watch, and a lot of heat advisories and excessive heat warnings and a few red flag warnings. They're all up in the western northwestern plains into, let's say eastern Washington, the eastern part of Oregon, and parts of central and southern California, and a few counties extending into Arizona. Uh, the radar, the satellite with the lightning strikes, kind of busy in the southeast, but here too, it's very, there's a lot of space in between where the thunderstorms are. If you're in them, you're getting hit hard. If you're either side of them, you're not getting much of anything at all. I didn't really get any rain so far today here. And you can see what's also the lightning strikes in upstate New York, pretty active there. This is where SBC put that slight risk up, Joe, where they got
Right.
all those lightning strikes. And
Right, and
yeah,
quite a yeah. But and again, it's not like a squall line. It's just as you just mentioned, there are some, localized spots that are getting hit very hard, and you could be 5 or 10 miles to the left or to the right or to the east or the west of these and not see much of anything. But where they are occurring, they are rather potent, and yeah, they're very good in putting up in that area, that zone, of the slight risk of possible severe weather.
we have a cold upper low east of the Bahamas, and this will remain a cold upper low. It's not going to do anything tropical there. There's a lot of clouds along the Texas coast, and then it's probably going to gel up into some more thunderstorms there overnight and on Thursday. And then we've got the anticyclonic turning that is going on in the west, and this is producing thunderstorms around the edges. You see them moving from north to south, from Colorado into New Mexico and Arizona. And then in California and the Sierra Nevadas, they're moving from south to north. So a little unusual to see that. You don't see it really in the east. Uh, this is a phenomena that you occasionally see out in the west. And as far as rainfall is concerned, over the next 7 days, uh, not a whole heck of a lot. Uh, Quarter to a half inch in New England, uh, half to three quarters, maybe a little bit more in parts of upstate New York into eastern Pennsylvania. Now, some of that is tonight, and then some of that is, since this takes us to next Wednesday night. So, if there's stuff going on Tuesday, perhaps, or Wednesday, uh, that's what the map is reflecting. We're still seeing potential for several more inches of rain from southeast Virginia to northern Florida, and then westward along the Gulf Coast. And then it picks up again in a big way along the coastal bend of Texas. That orange area represents 5 to 7 inches or more being indicated for the Texas coastal bend, and going up into southwest Louisiana tails off a bit in terms of the amount. It's only maybe a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches in southwest Louisiana. Quarter to a half with some pockets higher in the Rockies and in the Wasatch. Uh, but that's, pretty much it. And as far as WPC has a marginal risk for flash flooding, you saw what happened tonight with what Joe was describing going on in Sullivan County and in one or two other isolated places. But we've got a marginal risk from western Maine to Massachusetts and Rhode Island, southwestward, uh, back into Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois, and even pushing up into Iowa, southwestward, down through Tennessee. And then, of course, you've got this slight risk zone from southeast Virginia down to Georgia, and then west to the Texas coastal bend, where there's an area of moderate risk. Moderate risk. That's a 40 to 70% chance for flash flooding, and it looks like that covers the Houston, Galveston, Arthur area, Lake Charles, in Louisiana, and a marginal risk also up in the west in Arizona, with those thunderstorms that are developing around the periphery of that upper high. You're getting some activity there. I'm going to widen this out and just take a look at the upper air for going forward. So here's our trough here. It's got a closed upper low north of Lake Huron. And this is going to move on through. We'll get whatever we get or don't get tomorrow, depending on your location. And then that goes out. We get a shot of lower humidity, but because of the fact that they're going to have sunshine from start to finish, the temperatures are going to be very warm. And by the time we get to Sunday, maybe some spots will be getting back up to 90 degrees. Ridge builds temporarily in the east on Monday and then starts to weaken, and the ridge shifts and builds in a strong way over Oklahoma and the Central Plains and pushes northward. So that's where the real heat's going to be next week. When I say real heat, I'm talking 100 plus. It's all going to be in the middle. We're going to be on the edge of that Monday and Tuesday and into Wednesday. And I don't know, Joe. If these fronts are these short waves that are moving along that northwest flow, if they're active enough and there's enough cloud cover, that might actually help to hold the temperatures down a bit. I think we're still going to probably get to 90 or even low 90s. I just don't think we're going to push it much above that.
I agree with you. I don't think we're looking at, as I mentioned, last week we had those atrociously high upper 90s to or even above 100. And I said the next go around that we get hot, we'll probably get to 90, maybe a little touch above that. But that's about as far as it's going to go. I don't think we're going to be seeing any exceedingly hot temperatures coming our way for the end of the weekend or for a time early next week. And the upper level winds, the way they're aligned, Joe, will suggest a lowering of the humidity, lower dew points beginning later on tomorrow into Friday and on to the start of the weekend before things start to moisten up a bit. And hopefully, they will begin to turn more out of the northwest toward the end of next week and set the stage for another round of drier conditions, at least coinciding for a weekend.
Yeah, the dew points get down, they get down into the 50s on Friday, maybe even a few 40s in upstate New York and up into central and northern New England, and some 50 dew points even down into the central Appalachians and back through the Great Lakes. I mean, that's respectable. And they hold on. It looks like it holds on for much of Saturday, mostly 50s to near 60. And even on Sunday, they edge up, but they're still showing dew points during the day Sunday in the mid 50s to around 60 or so, which is not terrible. Monday, but then we start to see them creep up into the mid and upper 60s. And then as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday, we start to see those lovely 70 dew points. And just want to point out the darker reds, Joe, from Minnesota, if you want to really feel terrible, Minnesota, northern Iowa through Illinois. We're looking at dew points there up close to 80, believe it or not. I wonder what the temperatures are. Let's take a look. And this will also, at least we'll be able to see. That's where all the really.
We alluded to the fact that in the nation's midsection, that's where the real heat is going to be next week.
Yeah, and you see it here. I mean, just backing up here, starting with Sunday, where it's in the 90s to around mid 90s to around 100 in the plains, and then it gradually expands and the numbers increase when we move into Monday. You've got 100-degree readings pushing up into western South Dakota. On Tuesday, they push up into eastern Montana and into North Dakota, and then all the way south down into north central Texas. So it's a fairly widespread area of 100 plus and even 105 plus. It's still there on Wednesday. Also gets pretty hot across the deep south. So it's kind of extending from there westward because of how the upper high is pushing westward. And then gradually, later in the week, that heat area kind of gets centered in Kansas and Oklahoma, where we're seeing numbers of like 111, 107, 108, and also in areas back toward the Rockies. So the superheat uh, looks like it'll be, not be a big problem here, at least through Wednesday. I'm noticing that the GFS does try to bring low and middle 90s for late next week, Thursday and Friday and Saturday up into New Jersey, up the East Coast and as far north as New Jersey to about New York City. It's a little lower in New England. So, you know, that that could be because of the fact that there's no real cool air anywhere, except up in northeastern Canada, maybe. But there's no real cool air that's coming down. We've got our high that's building in. Nice little high comes in, saves the day, gets rid of the humidity for just about 3 days. And there are some thunderstorms around on Monday, but they're mostly in western New York, western Pennsylvania, down through the central and southern Appalachians. Tuesday, they get a little closer, but still the bulk of them are pretty much in the same place. And then sometime Tuesday night, Wednesday, or during the day Wednesday, it looks like some showers and storms move through. And there's some more storms that form again later in the week on Thursday, and again on Friday. So it's
There's a
just
decided there's a decided difference though in the models between the GFS and the European toward the end of next week. As you can see, there's a lot of scattered shower activity over the Great Lakes. Looks like it's associated with some kind of an upper low on the GFS for late next week. But there isn't very much in the way of moisture in that same area on the European.
European. Yeah.
And the European, by the way, is showing something most interesting toward not this weekend, but next weekend.
Oh, I see it. It comes in from the lower right there into the Bahamas. There's a little
Yeah.
bowling ball that rolls along. Let's widen this out and take a look at where it comes from.
Now, this is interesting because all of the last couple of years, 2, 3 years, we've been mentioning the fact that the GFS is always the first to suggest even the slightest chance of a tropical cyclone. And we have to wait and sit to see whether or not the European agrees. This is something rather different. The
Yes.
GFS has really no signal for anything down toward the Bahamas or in the Caribbean, and I think for the end of next week or the following weekend. But it's the European that is suddenly showing this. I like your analogy, like a bowling ball rolling uphill, so to
Yeah.
speak, north of Hispaniola and Cuba, and apparently making way for maybe Florida.
Yeah, the AI doesn't have it, by the way. Actually, I should take that back. The AI does have a little ripple. It's like a little inverted trough that goes northwest of the leewards and then heads towards the Dominican Republic and Cuba. But it's just, basically just a ripple in the flow. It's also, I'm noticing on the European AI, everything is very smooth. Okay. It's like someone drew the perfect map with the perfect high, with the perfectly, you know, round isobars. There's just very, very smooth. So, it doesn't really lend credibility.
It's like a map,
And
like a map that had a rolling pin roll over it.
yeah, exactly. The Canadian has nothing, and the new GFS has Yeah, the new GFS has nothing either. So yeah, the fact that the European has the signal first. Once upon a time, we probably would lay that a bit more as gospel, but the way the Europeans behaved in the last year or two, it may be in La La Land as well. So look, eventually, something's going to happen. I mean, eventually, it is going to pick up, and I still think, just I'm going to bring us back full screen, the fact that the Pacific is doing absolutely nothing, okay? I mean, we're almost to the end of July. There's been one named storm in the Pacific. It was a minimal tropical storm that lasted, um, probably as long as the average person's hot bath, just about 5 minutes, and that was that. So the fact that the Pacific is not really showing any signs of life probably lends credibility to the idea that the Atlantic will show some signs of life soon. But we've got this Saharan dust issue that has to get resolved. So until that gets resolved, things are going to probably stay quiet. We'll see.
All right. Well, tonight, because of the fact that we may have a rather historical speech from the president on tap in just a very few moments, we figure that we will cut this short. There really isn't much more that we can cover tonight weather-wise, but he's expected to give a speech nationally at right after 8 o'clock. So we figured we'd make this a short show tonight, but we will be back tomorrow at 7:35 with our Joe and Joe compendium of different weather outlooks for various parts of North America, and we will continue our conversation. And what else can we talk about tomorrow night, Joe? I
I don't
guess.
know. We'll wait till tomorrow night and we'll figure it out.
All right,
All
and
right,
Briller Company too.
that's correct. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Nighty night.